Ladies and gentlemen, at MMA Impact, we constantly strive to bring to you knowledge perspectives which can help your business in current times. Hence, we present our next speakers, our expert partner, Gowthaman, a self-proclaimed moral freak at heart, and he is the CEO of Achilles, along with an industry veteran, Lloyd Mathias, angel investor and business strategist for the session Rearchitecting MarTech with Blockchain. And ladies and gentlemen, I request you to kindly post your questions in the chat box as well, as these gentlemen will be addressing the same at the end of the session.
Hi, I am Ragothaman. I'm glad to be joined with Lloyd Mathias in discussing about re-architecting MarTech with blockchain in this session here today. It's a very pertinent topic for the industry at this point in time. It's a pleasure to discussing with the audience on these challenges that we're presenting to the industry. Re-architecting marketing technology with blockchain is an interesting topic at this point in time. Across the world, industries keep using the word re-architect, and we really don't know what actually is it that we're going to re-architect in the industry. And I think this cartoon best represented the situation. And thank you, Lloyd, for sharing this cartoon with me. It really pertinently reflected the situation that what are we going to do? I mean, what are we going to re-architect? And that's the key question that is in everybody's mind today. So what's happening at the outset? At the outset, by the end of the year, all digital engagement systems will be removed of all third-party cookies and identifiers. And it's a defining moment for the marketing industry. It's been a long time coming, but now we have a line in the sand, and the industry is now grappling with many different solutions. I wouldn't call it a doomsday, as many of them have talked about it. I would rather say it is a very big opportunity for marketers to really go back to the drawing board, go back to the first principles and see what it does and how it affects our business and make it a better place to where we are today. Net, both brands and publishers, and I'm calling out publishers here as well, will struggle to discover the consumers and engage with them online when the cookies and the identifiers go away from the web system. I think that's an important thing, both discovering the consumers online as well as engaging with them. And that's the thing everybody is right now grappling with to find solutions for. And there are many ways in which this scenario is being played out to land by the end of the year. And I've tried to use it in a very simple framework to say, if a brand or a publisher can ask themselves a couple of questions. Do you know your consumer, KYC? And can you activate it in the marketplace? If you tick both the boxes, I would say you belong to one of the quadrants, which is 10% of the industry today, because many brands and publishers do not have their own system to manage the consumers, and they have their own CRM or CDP or any of these technologies. And many brands don't even know their own consumers. I mean, we have fans, we have followers, we have consumers, but we really don't know the consumer by email address or device IDs or any such identifiers. So the world, as we see, is trying to be boxed into these four quadrants: those who don't know the consumers and those who cannot activate, which we believe is going to be 50% of the industry. And at the other side of the spectrum is those who know the consumers very well, who can activate, is 10% of the industry. It's a very important framework to keep in mind, because most of what I'm going to share with you is going to be on the back of these principles. We believe the market is going to be reconstructed in any one of these four quadrants. And let me just bring it to life on how each of these quadrants is going to play out in the future when the cookies deprecate. 50% of the industry, which do not have any identifiers to track, will be moving towards some kind of a cohort-based targeting, which Google recently announced through their federated learning of cohorts, or similar such archetypes from any of the other platforms. This segment will be heavily dependent on some kind of a cross-media measurement to really evaluate how the monies are going to be productive for their marketing expenses and investments. But In my view, the other 40% of the business, which is where the maximum amount of innovation is going to happen today, where different kind of a configurations are being evolved, where publications are coming together to create consortiums, or another set of walled gardens are coming out, where cookies are being replaced with some kind of a probabilistic matching, where consumers are being clustered to some kind of a group to activate. And only in the 10% of the industry today where identities are being used, which replaces cookies with some form of technology that is used to track consumers to activate. So why are we talking about all this across these three buckets? Because we believe whether it is the cross-media measurement or the gardens that is going to come up into new kind of consortiums or new identity solutions, all of them need some kind of a new architecture to manage the campaigns or marketing investments. That's where we believe blockchain technology comes in and enables this in a very different manner. Why? Because any cookie replacing technology will now need to carry some very unique capabilities or responsibilities and liabilities. Cookies were so far being very free and it didn't carry any liabilities, but anything that's going to replace cookies will need to have some unique features. And some of them have been discussed widely across the industry. I'm just listing it down as 8 of them. The first and foremost is every technology that's going to replace a cookie needs to be some kind of an encrypting technology and what they also call as salting. Salting essentially means how that particular consumer need not be traced back to their original identities. Any technology that is going to be used needs to be decentralized in its design because it needs to be owned and managed by many players in the supply chain. Whatever happens to this consumer tracking technology needs to capture and be conveyed across the entire digital supply chain. It needs to be managed in a transparent manner, and a consent management portal needs to be maintained by the brands and the publishers. This technology needs to be independent, non-biased, auditable, and should be able to detect fraud. I mean, these are unique new things that the marketing industry needs to now grapple with to find out how to address this new re-architecture, as we believe. So essentially what happens is in this new world, there is a need for an auditable, unbiased, decentralized, and a consistent taxonomy that manages the entire digital marketing ecosystem. And blockchain or a distributed ledger technology helps the industry provide these capabilities. What it means is that if I have to put it in a very pictorial manner, today, the many stakeholders in the ecosystem talk to each other in a slightly more chaotic manner. This system of a distributed ledger ensures that all of them talk to each other in the same way, in a consistent manner, same level of encryption, same level of control and taxonomy and ability to manage data sets. And this is a pictorial way to show that how the different stakeholders can come together to form the new ecosystem. There are 3 principles which falls into this. This is where so only plug from the company which I'm working for, please. So we have crystallized this into 3 unique characters. One is differential privacy, which is all about how an audience data needs to be encrypted and made non-traceable. Federated learning, where 2 or 3 enterprises in the supply chain can safely and securely share the data with each other. And whatever those sharings are being done is maintained in a distributed ledger or a common record so that there is trust that can be built amongst the enterprises to share safely and securely. So in the new world, when the cookie deprecates and any new technology that comes in to solve the problem, we'll need to address these 3 things: differential privacy, federated learning, and a distributed manner in which this can be done. So let me bring it to life. Currently, we are working with a few corporates across the region. For example, in cross-media measurement, if you look at what WFA wants to talk about it from their own global principles, is any new techniques that needs to be used for measurement should be privacy safe. It needs to respect consumers' privacy and should not be re-identified. It needs to be trusted and it needs to be transparent, right? So this technology of a differential privacy and a federated learning and a distributed ledger together ensures that multiple platforms can share the data in a safe and secure manner for the industry to measure and evaluate. So technically speaking, you can have a digital TV plus linear TV reach and frequency curves using this technology so that you can properly plan for a multimedia planning purposes. And we're working on some of these cases today. Equally, in the second case where different industries or publishers or participants coming together to solve this problem of scalability, we see trends like a beauty marketplace being created, publisher consortiums are being created, or even a sports fan marketplace, and we are working on some of them already today. This is an opportunity where when more than 3 or 4 platforms come together, contribute their audience base to create a sizable opportunity for brands and consumers to activate. Once again here, the same technology of distributed ledger, differential privacy, and a federated learning helps create this marketplace for our consumers to activate it in a better manner. Last but not the least, this is where the maximum noise is going on today in the industry, where it is all about new identity solutions like Unified ID or Brightpool ID or LiveRamp ID or Verizon ID. Many ID solutions are there that's coming to the system. In this new alternative, there are 5 things that the industry is trying to address. The provenance of impressions, which means that whether the impressions were really seen or not. Now the provenance of identities, where we really want to know whether this consumer has been given consent and have they been activated properly or not. Is this consumer a human or a bot? And how can we use this information to manage campaigns in real time and eventually can make payments as well? So there are some use cases here as well where this technology is brought to life. So I just want to summarize this in a simple way to say that eventually it boils down to 2 broad things. One is from a marketeer's point of view. The need of the hour is to have a system that provides provenance of impressions, identities, and able to attribute it very well. And from the industry's point of view is to create a new collaborating platform where more than 2 enterprises can safely, securely, and in a compliant manner share data with each other. And I'm glad to inform or let you know that we are partnering with MMA in this initiative by providing 2 programs. One is we are working with many enterprises in identifying invalid traffic, and on a shared basis, multiple enterprises can share their own understanding and list of traffic that's invalid, and we create a universe of invalid traffic identifiers that can be given back to the market for blocking or campaign management purposes. And we're inviting founder clients in India to join us in this initiative. We're also very happy to announce through this platform that we are going to help create a new privacy playbook for the marketeers, particularly on those 8 qualifications and how to make the organization get ready for encryption, salting, consent management, auditability, so on and so forth, and a step-by-step guide. We want to announce it and launch it soon. So that's a gist of what I wanted to share with you today in this short notice. But more importantly, I'm very happy to have Lloyd, a good friend of mine, who's been a keen observer of the industry and the way the industry has transformed from pre-digital to digital to this new addressable way of marketing. And I really want to have Lloyd, your views and thoughts on this, because it's a very heavy topic, isn't it? I mean, the topic itself has got lots of words and new buzzword that's been introduced into it, but I really want your help to see if we can demystify this and share your views and thoughts on this.
Hey, thanks, G-Man. That was really interesting. I have a couple of reactions, and then I want to probe you a little bit into what is Achilles offering. I think the first thing I want to say is that, clearly the next 7 odd months is going to be very challenging for businesses and for marketers in general.
Right.
Even outside of the impact of the pandemic, I think we're talking of two big developments. The one that you talked about is, Google kind of discarding the third-party cookie access, right? So that is going to be a big change, and clearly what Achilles is talking about is addressing that. I think the second and most specific to the Indian context is the fact that the impending personal data protection bill is about to be passed, right? Sooner than later,
Yes.
say June or July, that's going to happen.
Right.
And that's India's equivalent of the GDPR, but in some ways, in a sense, a little bit more stringent.
Right.
What this will mean for marketers, to my mind, is that the things that they took for granted in terms of how they were planning their digital campaigns, now a lot of this is going to come under question.
That's
now,
right.
I see this having two significant implications. One is what we've seen, let's say, in the last 3 to 4 years, but accelerated in the last 14 months in India, is that the percentage of marketers spend on digital has gone up dramatically, right? If you saw the FICCI E&Y report, for most marketers, digital has already crossed the threshold of being possibly the highest media block, even overshooting television. And for a lot of the new digital age companies, today it's the first block. It's 60-70% of their spends goes into digital. So I think that's one reality. The second is some of the big strengths of digital was really its sharp targeting abilities, right? As long as television went through PRPs and print went through IRS or NRS, there was a little bit of a spray and pray, right? The context of digital is that I can target a consumer precisely at that moment when he needs to be targeted. I have a lot more than just his demographics and psychographics. I specifically know what he searched for, which is the last site he browsed. I have his browsing history. Now, with the cookies going from Jan 1st third-party cookies, therefore, we are saying that consumers will have to be developing their own view of the consumer. Businesses will have to develop their own view of the consumer, which will not, therefore, have these guideposts from Google, the third-party cookies, and therefore will have to be extra watchful, right? So I get that part completely. What I want to understand in depth is, therefore, how does Achilles play a role, right? You talked about the two vectors of, know your consumer and can you activate him, those are two parts.
Right.
So are you going to be helping, in a sense, the activation process? Are you going to be helping businesses build better knowledge of knowing their consumer better?
Yeah, good question, Lloyd. So, personal data protection bill is a very important reference point. Quite a few enterprises or most of the clients think that it is only GDPR. So no need to worry about it in India, but here it is definitely going to come. So from Achilles' point of view, what we are bringing to the table is a distributed ledger technology. I don't want to use the word blockchain because people jump into cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and others. But a distributed ledger technology, what it provides is to help the enterprise safely, securely share the data with another enterprise, which is not possible today. If you have to really say that if my data is very important to me, how do I share my data or collaborate with another enterprise in a safe and secure manner? So that's the first principle which we are trying to help in. And our technology helps provide this encryption techniques and how do we do it without sending the files in some other form. It is only server to server based. So
if I can interrupt you briefly, G-Man, what you're saying is, therefore, as a marketer, since right now I don't have access to a consumer's browsing history, and I therefore want to target him. Let's say if I'm a producer of printers,
right?
I would typically, in the current context, look at somebody who's browsed or who's searched for printing or inkjet or whatever. Now, if I don't have that history, therefore, I will need to find collaborative sources, or I will need to find consumer cohorts of people who are likely to be in the market for printers. And through a forum like Achilles, I will be able to share my data, but without compromising any of my data. So I'm not going to be worried about a competitor getting access to it or any other marketer getting access to it. Is that right?
Absolutely, Lloyd. I'm just going to bring it to life like what you talked about printers. Let's say a brand like Pepsi, I've worked on for a long time, so I keep thinking about it. A brand like Pepsi
I'm familiar with that too.
Yes. So the brand like Pepsi can definitely, in a safe and secure manner, share data with their pouring partners, let's say Pizza Hut or any other allied industries sectors. Together, they can enrich their understanding of consumers a lot better, because otherwise there is nothing in the web system today. Today, they were using cookies in some form or the other. And they can also share that information with, let's say, the sponsors on the other side of the supply chain. So it helps in enriching one's understanding of consumers in a safe and secure manner without compromising your existing consent management or whatever terms and conditions you are supposed to honor with your consumer, right? But it doesn't stop there, Lloyd. I mean, there are options that has such solutions existing already. Where we bring in as a new dimension to the whole thing is that an insight is not necessary and sufficient enough if it is not activated. So when it is activated is when the loop is closed, right? So if I've identified my consumer and I know I've partnered with some other enterprise and created a cohort and I'm going to activate, in the new regulations of PDPB or PDPA or GDPR, they mandate that whatever has been recorded of acting on the consumer needs to be kept and updated in your records. So the activation record needs to be updated on the consent management. That's the crux of the problem today. So because you're not living on an anonymous cookie, so to close the loop is to record your activation and update actions done on your own consumers, which is what we close the loop with.
So for a lot of our marketing colleagues who are tuned into this session, therefore the key takeaway would be two parts. The one part is the need to actively build in-house data sources. You will need to kind of build your own consumer cohorts. You will therefore go back into researching and getting insights, mining insights from your existing data sources to understand that. And the second part, given the context or the tightening of privacy and the fact that most responsible marketers will be very conscious, I think you need to be ultra careful about how you're going to be targeting them without giving away any cues. So in a sense, you're not really going to be able to get a totally anonymous consumer. At the same time, you want to make sure that the consumer you're targeting has a little relevance to your brand. He's likely to be a purchaser. And you're saying somewhere this process of an industry coming together and sharing data will make the process more easier and therefore will not be determinant on, let's say, the big 2 or 3 players who kind of control the ecosystem. Is that right?
Absolutely, Lloyd. Yeah.
Okay, very interesting. Okay, so I guess we'll have to kind of take this discussion further and deeper, but till then, I guess we'll wait for the Q&As and take it forward from there. Will that be perfect, G-Man?
Absolutely, Lloyd. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for that incisive discussion. And we are glad to have received so many questions from our audience. First of all, let's begin with a question that I have for you, Lloyd. There is one very interesting question that's been discussed these days as to why marketers in India will need to watch out for the new personal data protection bill regulation and Google's doing away of the third-party cookies.
Thanks, Nisha. I think two big watch-outs in the context of India. So you're right. I think one is that the personal data protection bill is due for being passed anytime that Parliament sits, given the fact that obviously right now there's the COVID crisis. I think more importantly, it means that all businesses and marketers in India who've been using digital marketing as the mainstay right now have been either kind of vaguely following the GDPR, which is the European Union's standard. And now there are a lot more covenants in place which are relevant to the Indian context. Right, and that would mean they have to really realign the way they look at, how they do digital marketing, and make sure that they don't violate any of these provisions. And as I understand, a lot of Indian businesses and marketers aren't familiar with the details of the provisions. Right, so if this becomes law anytime in the next 2 months, it's a serious issue. The other, which we partially addressed in the course of the presentation, was the fact that Google is doing away with third-party cookies. Which means today a lot of digital marketing happens because marketers have the benefit of knowing a consumer's, net history, right? So what has he been, following? What has he been searching? And therefore that after Jan stops being a reality. right? I think both these factors together, therefore, will mean that a lot of the existing way that digital marketing is being done by businesses in India will change in the next 6 to 7 months, right? And a lot of businesses, therefore, have to prepare for this change and have to build their own internal data warehousing systems. So I think those are two critical issues that need to be remembered. And a lot of businesses actually have to project management the next 6, 7 months in terms of how they're going to prepare for it so that they're not caught flat-footed early January. And I think that's one of the very, very critical kind of call outs for all the marketeers of this session.
Thank you so much, sir, for addressing that question. And now let me ask our next audience question to G-Man. So this question is from Jacob Thomas, Commercial Director, L'Oreal. And his question is, retailers have access to 1P data at scale. Brands have the ability to create value-added engagement. How can blockchain help sharing within the frames of data privacy regulations?
Thanks, Ishan. Thanks, Jacob. It's the most relevant question in the industry today. I'm going to pick up the point about regulation, isn't it? The key regulation that talks about privacy is what we call as record of processing of activities, or they call as ROPA in GDPR. What it means is that when a consented data is being acted upon, both the parties need to maintain a record of what's been done with the data. That's where the regulatory requirements come in. So if a brand is sharing the data with another first-party data owner, which means that the consumers are given only consent to the respective companies. Nobody gives universal consent. So what blockchain gives you is a facility to maintain the record of what's been done with the data. And it needs to be concurrent. It needs to be simultaneously updated on both the enterprises. So it's like a distributed record of processing of information. That's where the crux of it. I mean, even in the presentation, I talked about federated learning and a distributed ledger. This technology ensures that the enterprises can maintain the record of what's been done with the data in a distributed manner. Therefore, they're becoming compliant.
Thank you so much, G-Man, for addressing that question. And now probably, Lloyd, you can answer this one. This question is from Anil Balan, co-founder of Splendor IMAC Private Limited. And his question is, pandemic with adoption of technology is reshaping every facet of our lives as consumers, thereby are changing the customer experience. Blockchain strategy is highly oriented to customer engagement. And what's the future of marketing in the coming days with increased consumer targeting?
Thanks for that question, Anil. I would say two things. I think one is, in a sense, what the pandemic is forcing marketers to do is to go back to the basics, right? I think what one will need to do, therefore, is mine in-house insights, data insights, and also go and relook at your core consumer cohorts. I think today, thanks to the ease of digital marketing, a lot of marketers have kind of done a lazy sort of marketing, right? So you literally go by a consumer's search history and you go by a lot of cues he leaves behind through cookies and other means, and therefore very easily retarget him or upsell to him. I think what we're recognizing, given some of the changes that are due in the ecosystem, is that marketers will have to kind of go back to the basics and start mining their data, start looking for key insights in consumer behavior, and then work their entire communications and marketing strategy through that. And that, I think, is the critical part, which today a lot of new age marketers have kind of put on the back burner. A lot of it is the science of targeting and getting there using a lot of technologies. Whereas at one level, it's really about understanding genuine consumer behavior and what aspects of your communication and product needs to therefore reach out or be pushed to that consumer. I think that will be the critical change that one would see in the next few months.
Thank you so much, Lloyd. And now let's go back to G-Man. So we have a question from Srinath Sharma from Aditya Birla Group manager. He's a manager at the Aditya Birla Group. Will modern marketing affect the existing customers?
It's a good question. See, at the heart of it is consumer consent. The entire brouhaha about privacy has come in only because we abused the cookies too far, too deep into it. And we chased them, we tracked them, we haunted them. And now we are going back to ensuring and honoring the privacy, right? So in modern marketing, to me, existing customer needs to be treated with respect, with consent, and with due diligence for what's been done with the data sets. So responsible advertising is what I would say modern marketing is all about. I mean, to draw a parallel, I was talking to Lloyd some time back about this. We have self-regulated ourselves for many advertising principles. ASCII has some guidelines. We said that we will not advertise to children. We said that we will not advertise liquor in certain time bands. Very similarly, very soon, we should also say we will not advertise to consumers who have not given consent. I mean, the ethical way of addressing consumers is, I think, will become one of the key modern marketing pillars. Lloyd, I think that, I mean, you will be able to talk about it much more passionately than me, but that's the point.
Absolutely. I think, Jivan, you said it pretty well. But what I would like to add is the fact that, on the traditional media, when it comes to, say, television and print, most marketers have kind of, worked at a broad consumer profile and then have chosen programs or chosen media outlets that they're likely to see their consumers use. In digital, that was not necessitated at the marketer and the media planners level because there were enough of technology cues that a consumer left behind. Now, with the absence of a lot of these technology cues or cookies in a short way, I think they will have to now rediscover new ways to targeting so that digital doesn't become a kind of spray and pray mechanism. And therefore, the sharpness of your targeting and the ability to maybe collaborate with other businesses, non-competing businesses, and reach the audience in a more timely, effective, and in a safe way, which means not infringing on consumer privacy. I think that will be the key to successful marketing. Therefore, in a very simple way, I think the marketer has to understand the regulatory framework and understand technology as well as he understands consumer behavior and communications.
Thank you so much for that answer. And our next question is from Mr. Ritesh Sonone. And his question is, can you please share some marketing strategies for beginner or startup companies?
It's a tough one, Ritesh. And it will be a long answer. I don't know whether we'll have time to fill that in. But my immediate reaction as a self startup, I'm a learning person in the past 18 months setting up this company. I would say for a startup, first get the addressable market right to exactly know what's the product you have and have you got the product fit, and is there a market need for it? And sometimes we think too much about our own product. It might not be even ready for the market to accept it. So I would say do a deep, hard, tough questions to be answered about. Don't take your product too much to your heart. Try to listen to the market. So,
yeah, I think good. Sorry, just to add to the point, I think the other point I would just advise Ritesh is there's nothing like going back and listening to the consumer. So I think this now more than ever is really the need to really understand what the consumer wants and really get to the core of the insight, because as long as you're not addressing that issue through either your product or your communication, ideally both, your marketing will always be ineffective.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, and thank you for sharing your own personal experience, G-Man. And now, before I move to the other questions, we have two interesting questions from students over here in our audience. So let's begin with the student questions. The very first one is from Abhishek Mishra, who's asking, how is blockchain effective in rural markets? He has another question which says, how does encryption work in rural markets? Can any one of you throw some light on the same?
I'll take that.
Yeah.
So, at the heart of it is encryption in blockchain or in distributed ledger technology. So I presume when we talk about rural marketing, the closest is the mobile phone and therefore the mobile phone number. How can that number be non-traceable, or how can we still honor that individual for having shared that phone number and not abuse it is what I would say the heart of it. I mean, in India, we have run many campaigns by giving a missed call and then take that number and then use it for activation. those kind of campaigns might need to be thought through once again, because that's not what the consumer signed up for. So we need to think through that. But I would say encryption is at the heart of it, and blockchain in its pristine form. Now I'm talking about Bitcoin or a similar kind of cryptocurrencies. Can play in India, it's yet to be regulated, but can play a role in rewarding consumers with alternative currencies for the act they have done by watching a program or watching some content on the phone. But that is slightly far ahead in the Indian market right now.
Thank you so much, sir. And the next student question is from Vibhor Arora from KJ Somaya. He asks, what are the skills that are a must for upcoming marketers? And we have a chance and the time to build up our skills in the next 2 years. What areas and skills should we focus on?
Right down the alley, Lloyd.
Okay, so thanks, Vibhor. I think, the core of marketing will always remain understanding your consumer. So I think the more you understand consumer and how to get, the consumer insight, which is understanding the basics of market research and hearing what the consumer is saying, I think one aspect is absolutely critical. The other point, which is very critical in the years that you spend getting your business school, going through business school, I think is understanding the impact of technology. You have to recognize that today we're talking about 650 million Indians who have access to a smartphone and therefore to the internet. And therefore today reaching a consumer is a lot more about being able to reach out to that consumer effectively using technology. And at the same time, keeping some of the guidelines in place. Consumers are going to be increasingly conscious of their privacy, about how they're being targeted, where they're being targeted, and also not being targeted in a manner that makes them feel that their personal data is being compromised. And it's a very fine line, right? Every one of us wants to have an intuitive experience with technology. At the same time, we don't want that intuitive experience to kind of make us feel very creepy. How come he got our data, right? So I would say the second part is really diving deep, understanding technology. In any aspect of business, I think today technology will be at the forefront. I think that's one aspect. I think the third and most critical aspect is really understanding the dynamics of media, right? We were traditionally, let's say 5 to 10 years ago, predominantly a television and print-led, business in terms of marketing. I think today it's going to be digital first, right? So every step, I think it'll be how consumers react on the digital front. And therefore, the more time you spend understanding the impact of digital media, the various social media platforms and how they can reach consumers, I think that will be a critical aspect when you craft your messaging and you go through your marketing plans.